The throne of fate had eternity, and Sekim gave it silence. He hung in the writhing dark, not struggling, not surrendering, simply enduring. The smoke coiled through him like a living thing, patient as stone, knowing as death. It had asked its question. It already knew the answer. It waited for him to name it. For this was the way of the thrones, not cruelty, but tempering. The throne of balance had found him worthy, had seen the steel in his soul, and accepted it for the forge. And what is a soul's will but a blade finer than any smith could hammer from the bones of the earth? Iron rusts, bronze shatters, even heaven-fallen steel yields at last to time's patient hunger. But the will of a man, honed, hardened, stripped of all that blunts its edge, this alone endures. This alone shapes the weft of worlds. The thrones did not break their servants. They burned away the dross. They demanded the shedding of earthly chains, love, longing, the soft anchors that bind men to single moments in single realms. For how can a hand move between worlds if it clutches at one? How can a traveler walk the roads of correction if his heart lies buried in soil he must leave behind? This was the price. This had always been the price. Those who serve the thrones do not die in that service, but they must die to all else. And Sekim, who had crossed 1,000 thresholds, who had given up homeland and history and the small joys of men who stay, Sekim had found the one thing he could not surrender. Somewhere along the infinite roads, his heart had softened. Whether by choice or by the slow treachery of time mattered not. The stain was there. Not darkness, but warmth where clarity should reign. The throne saw it as one sees blood upon white silk, unmistakable, irrevocable. The drag of attachment, the weight of longing, impedance in a vessel forged for passage, not rest. The throne knew the shape of it, knew its name, knew, too, the fire that would burn it clean. For there is no stain that eternity cannot scour, no softness that suffering cannot harden back to steel. But the burning must be chosen. The cleansing must be claimed. The throne waited, unyielding. They came boiling from the temple's mouth like maggots from a wound. pale, jointed abominations that moved with a scuttling, unholy grace. Things that had once been men, perhaps, or had worn men like garments. Flesh stretched over frames too long, too jointed. Fingers that ended in razored bone. Dozens of them, pouring down the black stones in a chittering tide. And behind them something larger stirred in the shadows of the colonnade. A bulk that blocked the dying light. A shape that hurt to perceive. Conan's blade sang free, a streak of silver lightning hungry for black blood. So much for parley. Yasmila raised her arm, and the bracelet blazed like a star brought low.
Ishkandrel!
She cried, her voice a clarion that shattered the silence like the crack of doom.
Moruveth, consume.
The air rent asunder. They came through screaming, sound beyond sound, frequency beyond hearing. Two serpents vast as galleys, scales like hammered ivory, eyes like pits into frozen eternities. Ishkandrel burned with plasma ice, cold so absolute it seared the soul. Moruveth trailed cosmic fire, flames that whispered of stars in their death throes. The pale things faltered. For one instant, predators became prey, and they knew it. Then the feeding began. Conan did not watch the serpents work. He was already among the horde, and he did not fight as men fight. He fought as the wolf feeds in the fold. The Unmaker rose and fell like a headsman's iron, each stroke a brutal pronouncement of doom. Hot blood sprayed across his face, and he did not blink. Bone crunched beneath his boots, and he did not slow. The pale things came at him in waves and broke against him like surf against a reef, and the reek of their dying filled the mountain air. Copper and rot and something older, fouler, the stench of things that should have perished before the first sun rose. He had seen eldritch fire before. He had walked through sorcerous slaughter and come out the other side with blood on his hands and ice in his heart. The serpents were vast and terrible and not of this world, and Conan marked them with the grim silence of a soldier who has learned that wonder is a luxury for men who do not wish to survive. Above him, the ivory titans coiled and struck, coiled and struck. Ishkandrel froze a knot of creatures solid. Flesh and bone and shriek crystallized in an instant, then shattered them with a sweep of its tail. Shards of frozen abominations scattered across the stones like broken pottery. Moruveth opened its jaws and breathed, and a dozen pale bodies became ash that scattered on winds from nowhere, their death screams lost in the roar of cosmic flame. And Yasmela stood at the center of it all, eyes blazing white, arms raised, conducting slaughter like a symphony. She was no longer the woman who had fled Conan in the night. She was something else now, a conduit, a vessel, a throne from which alien powers pronounced their judgments upon the world. Yes, sang the architects. Yes, the Old One. Bring us the Old One. From the shadows of the colonnade, the Ancient One lurched forward, a bulk of too many limbs, draped in the rot of epochs. Its flesh was gray and glistening, pocked with mouths that opened and closed in obscene rhythm, and its eyes, too many eyes, clustered like pustules across what might have been a face, held the cold intelligence of something that had ruled this shadow since before the Hyperboreans built their first hut. It had never known a hunter that did not flinch. It had never faced a predator greater than itself. It did not understand what challenged it.
There.
Yasmela breathed, her voice thick with borrowed fire.
There is your meat.
The serpents turned as one and struck. The serpents struck the Ancient One, and the mountain shook. Ishkandrel's coils wrapped the bloated bulk, frost spreading across gray flesh like creeping death. Moruveth's jaws closed on a cluster of limbs, cosmic fire searing through meat older than memory. The thing screamed, a sound that was not sound, a vibration that rattled teeth and loosened bowels, and thrashed against its destroyers. Yasmela was a conduit of Stygian power, eyes white as the glaciers of the void, arms raised to heavens that had no name. The architects sang through her blood, drunk on the feast, gorging themselves on the death light of something ancient and vast. She was open, utterly open, a gate through which power flowed without limit or restraint. She did not feel the necrophagous breath of the creature at her back. One of the pale things, faster than its brethren, cleverer, bred for the gap. It had circled wide while the serpents fed, slipping through shadows with patient intent, drawn by the blazing beacon of her unguarded spine. Its razored talons rose, glinting with the cold light of malice older than sin. Conan saw, 30 paces distant. He stood hip-deep in the wreck of what had dared him, ash eddying about his thighs, grey drift lifting in hot coils as though the earth itself recoiled from him. His arms were filmed with soot. Sparks clung and died along his skin. He roared, a bellow torn from the iron dawn when the world first learned fear, and drove forward. Crom! His curse was thunder in the mist. He was a wolf denied the throat, a Cimmerian titan whose iron muscles knotted in a futile surge against the space that mocked him. The pale dead clawed and dragged, clutching at his limbs, and the distance between himself and the queen yawned wider with every heartbeat, a chasm no stride could span. The talons fell. They ripped through silk and flesh in a single obscene instant, a violation swift and final. Yasmela's breath burst from her in one harsh cry. Shock and agony fused together, followed by the cold, dawning certainty of her own frailty. She lurched forward, struck the stone, and the world flared white. The bracelet dimmed. Above her, the serpents flickered. Loss of coherence, loss of anchor. Their forms guttered like candles in a sudden wind, and the Ancient One, sensing weakness, thrashed with renewed fury against coils that no longer burned so bright. The pale thing loomed over the fallen queen, raising its claws for the killing stroke. The smoke was killing him. Sekim hung in the black, lungs aflame, mind breaking. The measures would not resolve. The tallies would not stand. The paths slid and failed beneath him. All he had been, traveler, crosser, servant of balance, buckled beneath the weight the throne laid upon him. See, he ceased his struggle. Not surrender, not yet. Exhaustion, the bare failure of strength. He drifted, limp in the crushing dark, and in that stillness, something stirred. A face, jet black hair, dark as the spaces between stars. Golden brown eyes holding storms and distances unspoken. the familiar line of a jaw, the shape of lips he had never touched. Yasmela. The name rose without leave, and with it came the truth he had buried beneath duty and distance and the cold workings of his calling. He had told himself she was a factor, a point along the road, something to be weighed in the tallies of fate. He had lied. She was the anchor, the fixed point about which all measures bent. Not a factor, a constant. The single truth the tallies could neither diminish nor deny. He had crossed 1,000 thresholds. He had never crossed the one that mattered. The smoke did not merely shroud, it judged. And in that naked admission, it found him worthy. Light tore through the black, not gently, but with violence, as though his truth had burned the darkness like fire through rotted cloth. The smoke recoiled, screaming beyond sound, and Sekim saw.